Hello, hello fellow students. This is group 6 and we are presenting on the middle ages. Basically, when we talk about the Middle Ages, it's basically concentrate on the Renaissance and what followed after the Renaissance rather than the era itself. Starting from the 14th century, we come to find that the European thinkers and writers, they used to celebrate and concentrate more on the Greece and the Rome. But after this period, there was the fall of Rome, and after the fall of Rome, there was a significant impact that happened later that is called the Middle or even the Dark Age. This is where we find the topic having great impact after the fall of Rome. It's where we find now scientists starting having more impact and changes on the area of concentration. Okay, we'll talk about the Catholic Church in the Middle Ages. Just as I've discussed earlier, we've come to know that after the fall of the Rome Empire, the Rome leadership, this is where we start concentrating on the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages to be precise. So we find that after the fall of Rome, there was no single state that was able to unite the entire Europe apart from the Catholic Church. For instance, we come to find that there was this Pope. The Pope, as we know, the Pope are usually leaders of the Catholic Church. So they had a very great impact in the leadership of the government, such as kings, queens, and other leaders derived from these powers, and they were also protected by the church, just as I've explained earlier. I'll give I'll start by giving an example of how the Catholic Church had great impact on the government and also the leadership, because we've known that after the fall of Rome, that is the 14th century, there was no government, there was no individual or a group of people that were able to govern the nation or the society. It was only the church, and this church, to be precisely, was the Catholic Church. For instance, there was the Pope of this Pope called Pope Leo the Third, that is in the 800th century. He was named after Frankish king and he named him the Emperor of Romans. And this was so rare because it was the first person to be named after a pope, and the empire lasted for long.
After the rise of the Catholic, then it was closely followed with the rise of Islam. Meanwhile, the Islamic world was growing larger and more powerful after Prophet Muhammad's death in 632 CE. Muslim armies conquered large parts of Middle East, uniting them under the rule of a single caliph. At its height, the medieval Islamic world was more than 3 times bigger than all the Christian. Then the rise of Islamic was closely followed with the Crusades. Towards the end of the 11th century, the Catholic Church began to authorize military expeditions or the Crusades to expel Muslims infidels from the Holy Land Crusaders, who were the Red Crossers on the coasts to advertise their status. They believed that their service will guarantee the remission of their sins and ensure that they could spend all eternity in heaven. They also received more worldly rewards, such as the papal protection of their property and forgiveness of some kinds of loans and payments. The Crusades began in the year 1095 when Pope Urban summoned a Christian army to fight its way to Jerusalem and continued on and off until the end of the 15th century. After the Crusades, it followed art and architecture. Another way to show devotion to the Church was to build grand cathedrals and other ecclesiastical structures such as monasteries. Cathedrals were the largest buildings in medieval Europe, and they could be found at the center of towns and cities across the continent. Around 1200, church builders began to embrace a new architectural style known as Gothic. Then the Black Death. Between 1347 and 1350, a mysterious disease known as the Black Death, the bubonic plague, killed some 20 million people in Europe, 30% of the continent's population. It was especially deadly in cities, where it was impossible to prevent the transmission of the disease from one person to another. The plague started in Europe in October 1347, when 12 ships from the Black Sea docked at the Sicilian port of Messina. The plague killed cows, pigs, goats, chickens, and even sheep, leading to a wool shortage in Europe. Thank you.